ॐ विश्वं दर्पणदृश्यमाननगरी तुल्यन्निजान्तर्गतं पश्यन्नात्मनि मायया बहिरिवोद्भूतं यथा निद्रया यः साक्षात् कुरुते प्रबोधसमये स्वात्मानमेवाद्वयं तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। बीजस्यान्तरिवाङ्कुरो जगदिदं प्राङ्निर्विकल्पं पुनः मायाकल्पितदेशकालकलना वैचित्र्यचित्रीकृतं मायावीव विजृम्भयत्यपि महायोगी वयस्वेच्छया तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। तस्मै श्रीगुरुमूर्तये नमः इदं श्रीदक्षिणामूर्तये। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणीम्। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे फुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः ज्वालितो ज्ञानमयः प्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवेत्रैकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावः दोग्धा गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्ससुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला। अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोत्तीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरणनदी कैवर्तकः केशवः। पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितं। लोके सज्जनषट्पदैर्हरः पेपीयमानं मुदा भूयाद्भारतपङ्कजं कलिमलप्रध्वंसिनः श्रेयसे। करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम्। यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः। ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनः यस्यान्तं न विदुःसुरासुरगणाः। देवाय तस्मै नमः। Devaya tasmai. So we saw the importance of Bhagavad Gita yesterday, and now, and we saw also that chapter 1 happens to be, we could not see that thing, yeah. Only we saw the importance of Bhagavad Gita. Now chapter 1 happens to be the introduction to the teaching of the Bhagavad Gita, and it is in the form of a dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna, and actually it really begins the teaching in the second chapter of 11th verse of the second chapter. So before that, whole thing is just an introduction of Bhagavad Gita, and Shankaracharya ji writes commentary from this 11th verse of the second chapter. And introduction, of course, is equally important because it makes a foundation for the whole teaching. So today we are going to see the introductory part, especially of the chapter 1. This introductory chapter, that is chapter 1, serves two purposes. The first one is it presents the basic human problem, which we call as a samsara. Samyak sarati means it is present there. It's present, and it was there, and it will be there till one finds a remedy. So this is a very basic human problem. Basic human problem means it's a universal also. And it is this particular problem is irrespective of a nationality, religion, caste, education, wealth, sex, age, stage of life, etc. I mean, irrespective of it, this problem is there. And it does not belong to a particular period of a history also. This problem is a human problem at any time of the history. It was faced by Arjuna before 5,000 years, considering Mahabharata war was before 5,000 years. So it was there at that time, and it was faced by Arjuna. This problem was there, and we are facing right now. And suppose a human being is going to survive even after 10,000 years from now, this problem would be there. Once we discuss, you will come to know about this. So basically this is a very fundamental problem which scriptures call as a samsara. So, and presentation of this samsara roga, the human disease, is the first purpose of the chapter 1. And then question arises definitely that why should Vyasacharya ji describe this samsara or this particular disease in the first chapter? The answer is because entire Gita Shastra happens to be the remedy of this particular disease. So that Gita Shastra means from chapter 2nd, 11th verse to the almost end of the chapter 18. So almost 17 chapters is a remedy for this disease, and therefore in chapter 1 the disease has to be shown, and that is been shown there. And we call them as a moksha shastra from chapter 2nd, 11th verse to the almost up to the 18th chapter end. It's called moksha shastram. Moksha shastram is a scripture shastra, means which deals with the remedy of this particular fundamental human problem. And unless we know the disease, we cannot find the appropriate solution or a remedy for it, and therefore it has to be described first. That is how this fundamental human problem has been shown in the first chapter. So this is the first purpose, and that is why the chapter 1 is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. I mean, Vishadaha means this samsara, this particular disease. So this is a human problem, and when it was faced by Arjuna, that's how it's called Arjuna Vishada Yoga. This is one, so first purpose. Then second purpose of chapter 1 is to introduce Guru Shishya also. That has a certain purpose. Whose dialogue is going to come from the 11th verse onwards of the chapter 2. So Arjuna and Krishna both disciple and the teacher both have to be introduced, because the entire Gita will be in the form of the dialogue between the two later, which is nothing but the remedy for this solution. So because of these two purposes, first to establish a human disease, and second is to introduce this Guru-Shishya dialogue. These two, because of these two purposes, chapter 1 is introduced here. Now we'll start with the first purpose, that is samsara varnam. What is this human problem or a disease? So a description of this human problem can be presented in many ways, like we are going to present right now today, was not presented in the first day. There also we try to find a solution. We said a wanting being and etc., etc. Here we will be presenting it a little differently, but it is ultimately the same thing, and the remedy also going to be the same thing. So disease is one. If remedy differs, then we can say that no, that was a different disease and this is a different disease. Disease is one, but it has been presented differently. And that is how it is. In the world also, allopathic people, the doctors look at the disease from one angle, and Ayurvedic people look at from the different angle. Homeopathic people look from the third angle. You know, the psoriasis, etc. is considered, that is a skin disease. And so the allopathic people will say it's a psoriasis, and they have their own way of handling. Ayurveda people say it is a kapha prakopaha. I mean, it's a predominance of, generally the skin diseases, am I right or wrong? She can correct me. I mean, skin diseases generally are considered from the very predominance of kapha. And like stomach ache, generally pains are related with the vayu prakopaha, generally. Vayu means, Vata prakopa, that is Vayu prakopa only. And the third one is generally a burning sensations. They are generally associated with this Pitta. So Kaphavata Pitta, etc. So they look little differently. And when they are in equilibrium, this Kaphavata Pitta, actually there are three elements only. Kapha means water, actually, and Vata means this air. And this Pittam is Agni. So actually this, because body is made up of 5 elements, so one of the element when it increases, it may be creating an imbalance, whatever it may be. When they are in equilibrium, that's a health. When there is a prakopa, means there is a predominance, when is in a higher proportion, etc., then some diseases occur. So that's how they look. Homeopathic people, I don't know how they look, but they have their own way of, because they use the language and all that, we understand that they have their own way of handling. So one disease can be looked upon differently, and therefore here also the same disease, human fundamental problem, can be looked in the scriptures differently. And here in Bhagavad Gita chapter 1, we'll be looking this problem in a particular way. And we say that this samsara roga is a combination of 3 diseases actually. It's a syndrome. Basically, it's not of one problem, but there are 3 diseases involved in it. The first one is a ragaha, attachment. Second one is a shokaha, sorrow. And the third one is a mohaha, delusion. These 3, the samsara roga has these 3 things. And what are these 3 things? The first thing, I said ragaha. And this ragaha, that particular disease has been mentioned by Bhagavan also in Bhagavad Gita at several places. What is ragaha is called attachment. And attachment means emotional dependence. That's all. It is emotional dependence. So attachment, when the attachment, the word attachment comes, generally a doubt arises in our mind is how could you differentiate between attachment and love? So I have narrated some 5 points which I am going to tell you. There are 5 ways we can look upon that there is a difference between a love and attachment. And definitely attachment is criticized by Bhagavan in the Bhagavad Gita at several places. And love is something which is glorified. In fact, in the characteristic of a wise person, the love is included there, that he has a love. Sarva bhuta hite rataha, daya bhutisho aloluptvam, etc. Daya also, and sarva bhuta hite rataha, etc. indicates a love for all the beings. So anyway, love is glorified in the Bhagavad Gita, whereas attachment is criticized. Definitely, therefore, it must be an attachment is presented as a trait of a samsari. That's how Bhagavan criticizes it. And love is presented as a trait of a liberated person, wise person. Now the differentiation between the two, I will tell you. The first point is this raga. We should know this because it's a characteristic of a disease. So we catch hold of a disease through the characteristic. You know, like person somewhere, I mean, it's not good to mention, but person has a pain in a particular part, and that too having some kind of a tumor, etc., then definitely, you know, he or she becomes an alert, and then biopsy, etc., all this. So there are certain characteristics of a disease we should know. So attachment being a disease, we should know what are the characteristics. First thing is attachment is based on a selfishness. And I'm emotionally hooked or dependent or holding on to a particular person or a situation or a relationship. In that, I never bother about the person, basically, and whether the other person gets out of some benefit from this relationship or not, I don't bother. But for sake of my happiness, and I depend upon somebody emotionally, and so the selfish dependence is called attachment, raga. Whereas in love, it's a totally different relationship, where I'm not going to emphasize very much on what I am going to get. I'm interested in other person's well-being. In fact, more the love, more you are interested in others' well-being, even at the sacrifice of your well-being. In attachment, you are interested in your well-being at the cost of the other person to the person to whom you are emotionally dependent. But in love, it's all the way entirely different. You are interested in the well-being of the others, even at the cost of your well-being. That's a major difference between the two. Then the corollary of the first, conclusion, we can take it as a second one, that attachment is always in the form of a taking. I mean, I hold on to the things, situations, people for taking something. Whereas love is something which is based on giving and sacrifice. So attachment in which there is a one mantra, taking, and because of the dependence, and second, in love, there is always a sacrifice, giving. So this is a corollary of the first one. The third thing is attachment is conditional. As long as a relationship gives me certain benefit, as long as I'm comfortable in relationship, I hold on to that. Whereas love is unconditional. I mean, there is total acceptance of a person. When there is a total acceptance of a person, well, there is no condition. In any relationship, there is a condition. Then we should understand it is not a love at all. This is simple characteristic. In any relationship, if condition is there, then definitely it is attachment only. It is not a love. We of course brand it as a love, and we sometimes, take an advantage of a person that I really love you so much and you, I mean whatever they say. But then ultimately attachment means this kind of a thing in which this condition is there. And how do we know there is a condition? If you don't become comfortable in a relationship, and if you feel like withdrawing from it, definitely it's attachment. Definitely it is attachment. And in a relationship, whatever may be the person, Puja Swami used to describe in this way only, whatever may be the person, but you accept it in total, well, then, and still you hope for his well-being, you work for his well-being, his or her whatever, well-being, well, then it is love. And in attachment, you, in a relationship, you try to always think of your well-being. And that's how there is emotional blackmailing also, lots of blackmailing. Where there is attachment, there is emotional blackmailing. Tremendous. I have seen a lot. I mean, this is how it is very, 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 very bad situation. Very bad situation. Anyway, so attachment is, of course, in terms of guna also it is born of rajoguna, etc. Where there is a love, etc. Where there is an attitude of giving, sacrifice, all this, there is a sattva guna, basically. That's how wise person have this quality. Anyway, this is third. Fourth, attachment generally is born of a weak mind, definitely, because you are dependent. Any dependency reveals that weakness of the mind. Any dependency. Physical dependency is one thing. Physical dependency is one thing, but we are talking about emotional dependency. And when the mind is empty, so it is a weak mind, and which is not happy within itself. Weak means here we consider that way. Or it's empty means it is not happy with itself. As the person, becomes, he doesn't have, he's alone, suppose. And if he's alone, then he feels loneliness. Then definitely, because he has nothing to, with himself, to revel upon. So he's an empty mind. So loneliness also is a result of this kind of a thing. Whereas the person who has a little stuff to think over, definitely he will not feel loneliness. He may be alone, but he will not feel loneliness. That's a big thing. Anyway, so and then when once person feels loneliness, he is going to be dependent emotionally to situation, to people, to anything. Very critical situation. It is not, that's how this disease is not an ordinary disease. Anyway, so the attachment is generally born of the weak mind. So it depends upon then definitely, so since it is not happy with itself, and therefore it depends upon external factor for satisfaction, happiness, etc. Whereas the love is always born of a strength and fullness. That's how wise people have that. And so this is a difference between, the fourth difference between the two. And the fifth one is, in attachment, intellect is generally covered. Intellect should not be covered in every situation, but it is covered in attachment arises. We are going to see with our friend Arjuna. These things are there. What I am discussing, it is there in Arjuna. So you will see. It becomes a practical, it's a case study for us. So in attachment, intellect is covered, and it leads to violation of dharma. When intellect is covered, because in buddhi there is a dharma. Right? In buddhi there is a freedom, there is a choice. Where there is a choice, even what to choose also is given. Both the things are given. Just there, it's just one coin, two sides. You have a freedom, choice on one side, and if you just go on the flip side, the other side, there is a what to choose is given also. That's called dharma. And that choice, what to choose, etc., is given based on what is right and what is wrong. So anytime when you do right, you feel good. Anytime when you do something wrong, the voice comes in. Later on it becomes little, very feeble. So, because by repeatedly doing a dharma, you don't listen. You are not sensitive enough to listen. It will not be erased away. It won't, never. Because it has come with the birth, so it won't go. We feel that I will erase it out, what is to be chosen. It's impossible to do. It's impossible. Because the entire creation is based on dharma. Anyway, I don't want to talk further, but basically that universal structure is such which is present in every human being. It may be Eskimo, or it may be anyone, even to the extent living being also. Living beings always love that they should not be hurt. And so we also know this very well, and therefore this is all dharma. One should not hurt others becomes a dharma, norm for the... Anyway. So what happens is, when the attachment, intellect is covered, and it leads to the violation of dharma. Whereas in a love, a person's intellect is always sane, it is clear, and therefore he does not violate dharma. And that's how attachment has a basis in likes and dislikes also, we say. Likes, dislikes are the enemies which will compel a person to go out of dharma. Definitely, to go away from a universal structure. That only makes sense. Whereas in love, there is no likes and dislikes. He just loves the person. He is not dependent emotionally, and therefore he does not violate dharma. These are the differences between attachment and very close emotion called love. There is a difference. Because being a closer, we will have to see the difference. And therefore, attachment is considered as a bondage, disease. And love is a sign of a freedom. So, the first disease, the samsara roga has these three things. The first thing is a ragaha, attachment. Then the second disease, which is expression of the samsara disease, is born out of the attachment itself. So, what is that? Shokaha, sorrow. Attachment invariably leads to sorrow. No way out. When the attachments arises, person should be ready for this second thing. He should be ready. If he is not ready, that is his or her fate. But otherwise, it's going to bring this. Attachment will only lead, this path of attachment leads only to sorrow. And because attachment means emotional dependence. And that emotional dependence on the external factors. And any external factor is not in your control. Any external factor. Entire universe, you can say, where you may be dependent on a property, physical body or a possession or anything. It is not within your control. And therefore, you lean on that, you become dependent emotionally on that, and that thing will leave. And like a person, who is having a crutch, and he all the time uses that crutch, and he definitely takes help of it, he is leaning on it. And suppose that itself will go away, what will happen? He will fall down, fall flat. So it definitely brings a sorrow. What I am saying is, when there is emotional dependence, we should be ready that the external world being what it is, it will not remain same. If it is a situation, certain situation, sometimes we become emotionally dependent. We create a certain situation around us, and then we try to maintain that situation, thinking that this is giving me a lot of emotional support. And you might have seen that it doesn't last too long. It doesn't last too long. So there is no ideal situation at all. There is no ideal situation. Everyone is in search of an ideal situation through which he can derive that emotional support. But nothing, because of the external factors are not in our control. And so two people are using sticks. One person is leaning on the stick. Other person also is using stick. You might have seen in the morning walk, I don't know here, but in India they keep a stick, a baton, and he doesn't take a support of that, but he just keeps in the hand. And while playing like this or like this, he moves. Well, that person, since he is not taking a support or he doesn't lean on that, he can play with it. And even if that is lost, if it goes away, he is not going to cry. But the other person who is leaning on the crutch definitely will have a sorrow. Anyway, so attachment is a psychological crutch which will make me psychologically flat, frustrated, disappointed, and in fact shocked also. Sometimes it brings a shock to a person. Because when you have a dependent and that person or situation just appear to you entirely different. Person may sometimes behave entirely different. Like mom is, all the time dependent emotionally on a child. A child is growing and growing and she is deriving a lot of happiness through it, definitely. And when he is grown, he or she is grown, and still, she is paying a lot of attention to a grown child, which should not be there, but he or she is paying. And then what happens is, one day that son or daughter says, "Mom, you are poking nose in my life," and that's it. Ho gaya. And then they complain to Swami and say, "Swami, we have already told them that they are grown up. Your duty is over. Now your duty is towards yourself." But they somehow thought that they should pay attention to them. And that fellow wants to pay attention to someone else in Valentine's Day. And therefore it's a big problem. It's a big problem. In fact, we pay attention to them with the expectation that they pay attention to us. That's all it is. They pay attention to me is emotional dependence. That's all. They should pay attention to me is emotional dependence. And well, he or she shows colors. And therefore, this is how the situation arises. I mean, when there is attachment, the disease is going to spread. Attachment is a disease. Well, that is there. The second phase of that disease is going to come. And that is shoka. There are, phases, stages of disease. And so this is second stage of the disease. Anyway, so the object on which I depend upon psychologically is impermanent in nature, and whether it is possession, maybe people, maybe property, maybe position, maybe physical body, anyone in the future, I'm going to lose out of this. And so that makes me high and dry. That's for you should basically learn this. When should I learn? That's now a point. So like this, give an example that we prepare for our old age. Because we are not going to earn until we retire. And so we always plan. Whatever income we have is we have to, we know that his income is going to spend day in and day out, and whatever we have money. So you plan properly. So you plan for the old age, not in the old age. Definitely you plan for the old age much, much before, right? So same way, and that planning would be in terms of saving insurance, etc., whatever it may be. If it is in India, we call about a provident fund, etc. I don't think here this kind of a thing is there. A graduate in provident fund, and when the provident fund comes, PF comes, we will manage this way and this way, and then children will have, the marriage expenses would be from this and that. Many ways. So, for this psychological leaning and the consequent future loss, we have not done any preparation. That's why it is a big problem. So once a person loses an object of attachment, there is a psychological pain, which is called shoka, sorrow. And Bhagavad Gita says the preparation can't be done when the problem arises. When the problem comes. So preparation has to be done much earlier. Like for the old age, you prepare much before the old age. And same way here also, we have to prepare much before the object on which I am dependent moves out, goes away. And that's called far-sightedness, in which we prepare ourselves much before. I think there is in Vairagya Shatakam, there is one verse which is beautifully saying this. Yavat swasthamidam sharira marujam yavat jara duratah yavat chendriya shaktira pratihata yavat kshayo na ayushah atma shreyasi tavadeva vidusha karyah prayatno mahan sandipto bhavanetu kupa khananam pratyuddamah kiridrishah. What it says is yavat swasthamidam sharira marujam. So as long as this body is free from any disease, arujam, and free from decrepitude, then say yavat jara duratah. Jara is far away. As long as this old age is far away, yavat chendriya shaktira pratihata. Apratihata indriya shaktihi yavat. So as long as this power of the senses are unaffected, yavat kshayah na ayushah. As long as this, life has not come to an end, so long, Atma Shreyasi Tavadeva Vidusha Karyah Prayatno Mahan. So far and so long, this discriminating people should put forth a lot of efforts for the sake of their own well-being. Atma Shreyasi, for their own well-being, they should put a lot of effort. Because Sandipto Bhavanetu Kupa Khananam Pratyuddamah Kidrishaha. Kupa Sandiptaha, when the house is on fire, then you want to dig the well for water. That's not going to basically help you. And so this is how I think Bhartruhari has said in Vairagya Shatakam, this about the preparedness, much before you get a sorrow from the emotional dependent thing. So if we try to solve the problem when the tragedy gets struck, that's not a wise approach, So be far-sighted, because every attachment is a potential sorrow. And so the second disease is this sorrow. Then the third disease is, now the third stage of the disease is moha. Moha means a delusion, basically. When the first two are there, then intellect definitely does not function properly. Intellect, when it is colored with the attachment, or when there is a sorrow in the mind, definitely intellect does not function properly. Because either we cannot take the decision, first thing, or if we take the decision would be wrong. If it is wrong and if you understand it is wrong, then you won't take the decision. But you take the wrong decision and you think it is a right decision. That's called moha. Moha dhatu is in the sense of moha vaichitya. The thing is one, you look at entirely differently. That's called moha. So it's a wrong decision. People tell also it's a wrong decision, but you always justify that that's the right decision. Because you have already crossed the two stages of the disease. Because your intellect is having affected by raga and shoka, sorrow and attachment. So, and then definitely, as I said, he will lead to a adharmic way of life. Adharma seen as a dharma, which will be very much there in the case of Arjuna, we'll see. Adharma is seen as a dharma and dharma is seen as a adharma. That's called delusion also. Moha they call delusion, confusion is called moha. And then of course when it comes to the third stage, then it's a vicious circle. I mean, it will spread very fast. So it becomes a vicious circle. So once I get clouded with this kind of things, my entire actions will be wrong. And not only that, because of moha, where you should not have an attachment, a new attachment can arise. To the extent that that object of attachment has really brought a sorrow for this person previously. He had experience. But in this situation now, he again gets attached to the same thing, same person, same situation. He takes hold of the thing which he should not take, because he has already experienced that this thing is going to bring a lot of pain in my life, but still he will do. And that's how a vicious circle, because a new attachment, then it is going to bring a sorrow again. And that's how moha also again. And this is how a cycle, vicious cycle goes on. This vicious cycle is called samsara. Samyak sarati iti samsara. Samyak sarati. Which really moves on without any obstruction, which flows. Literally it flows in human life. Without any obstruction. No one can create an obstruction to this flow. This of vicious circle. Attachment, then shokaha, mohaha. Attachment, shokaha, moha. Ragaha, shokaha, moha. Ragaha, shokaha, moha. Because when your intellect is clouded, definitely it will not know that this thing has created a pain in the past and I should be away from this. That kind of a thing also. It may happen so that the situation which has created a pain in a person, now he feels that this is much better. Actually, I would have taken that thing before. He would think that. People remind him, be away from this. You know, you have in your past, you only have told us that this thing has brought so much pain in your life. But he says, no, it's not so. That was a different situation, you know. And that way he tells, that was a different situation. That shows a moha. This expression, that was a different situation, now it's different, it's not. And the person definitely repents again. It repents. It happens. So it is just from dependence to dependence, to dependence to dependence. Ragaha, shokaha, moha. Dependence, emotional dependence to emotional dependence. You know, like the person, you tell him that you give up the cigarettes because it's too much chain smoker and so dependent on that. So he say, okay, I'll give up. And literally gives up. But then he starts this snuff, I think. So one dependence is gone and then other dependence starts. This is the situation here. So from this smoking to snuff, ultimately it's all tobacco only. But he takes tobacco now in a different form. That's all. So, and suffering to suffering, I'm just narrating what is the situation of the person who is ignorant. And everyone is born ignorant. If everyone is born ignorant, the potential of this disease is very high. Potential to get disease, potential to get infected. Now, this word is very, very common nowadays, coronavirus infection. This, because of ignorance, it is going to come. No person you find without attachment, etc. All this. Otherwise, why should the Shastra has a place? Shastra has a place for as a remedy. I mean, and that says it is a human problem, fundamental human problem, universal human problem. I mean, this is a highly infectious disease. Highly infectious. My God. Anyway. So, physical independence one cannot get, but emotional independence one can get. There will not be a chance that person will become physically independent. Impossible. Impossible. Because the physical body is totally dependent upon the external factors. That's how I said, if a person has, suppose, lost all the sense organs, I don't think he would survive. He would survive. You might have seen a person who has one or two senses may not be there. Maybe he is blind and maybe he could not speak. Maybe he could not hear. But all the senses, I have not seen. You might have seen, then it's a different thing. I have not seen. Because even if it is there, he is there, he would not survive. Because through senses you get everything for this body. Everything comes from outside, made up of 5 elements. And the world is of 5 elements. Those 5 elements only sustains the body. And therefore, that's how the senses are extrovert. It is good. You may feel that where are you sitting, Swamiji, and talking like this? I'm telling you. The senses are made extrovert in order to sustain the body. But the extrovertedness which we generally criticize is for happiness and security. If you think the object can give you, well, that kind of extrovertedness is not correct. So, but senses are extrovert is good. That's how every sense could go to a particular object and get it, and that's how the body is sustained. And therefore, but the senses and the mind have that kind of a thing that this external object is a source of security or happiness or a peace, as we discussed yesterday. Well, that's a wrong notion. Why it is wrong? Because it is not correct. It's not truth. Now we know very well it's not truth. And therefore, that is criticized. In as much as this vision, this particular notion is there, we criticize the extrovertedness of the senses, but not in terms of sustaining the life. And if the senses are introvert, definitely could not survive. Could not survive. Very difficult. But Swamiji, what is the role of sustaining life? What is the role of eyes? Very big role. Very big role. While you are doing exercise and you are moving around, you will have to see what is there, what is not there. I mean, many ways we can see each sense has a contribution in sustaining a life. We may feel that only eating can sustain life. No. That's how any sense object is considered as aharaha, they call. Aharaha means ahriyate iti aharaha. I think there is a Yoga Sutra also for that. Ahriyate iti aharaha. Every sense organ takes the food, right? It takes the food of a color, etc. We say that, ahriyate. So this is how the sense objects, all the sense objects, shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, all are considered ahara for different sense organs. Anyway, so this is the first purpose we have discussed is about psychological independence. And independence has I have a value for independence, and that independence in terms of psychological, emotional. Psychological means emotional independence we are talking about. Physical independence has no scope. Physically, one will be dependent. This is first purpose. Second purpose is to introduce Guru Shishya. As I told you, all the spiritual teachings that are found in our scriptures are all generally in the form of dialogues. In Upanishads also you find dialogue. Sometimes you find a question, the Shishya's name, etc. is not given, but there will be a dialogue. Or, and and sometime a guru's name also may not be there. It may happen so. But then we should know that it is a dialogue between the two. So that's how in the second purpose of the chapter 1 also is to introduce Guru-Shishya dialogue. That why, but why, what is the necessity for that? Means if you have such disease, definitely take help of someone. That's what it means. So, because generally there is a tendency in a human being that any disease occurs, he tries for a self-medication. That's a very big thing. Like somebody told me that headache occurs, there are 2,500 causes for a single headache. Eyes could be responsible, ears could be responsible, stomach could be responsible, many, many things. Neighbor could be responsible. Anything could be responsible. 2,500 reasons, causes for headache. But when headache occurs, this fellow, the champion, he takes medication on his own. This headache is just due to this only. Like that he tells. And he takes. And that's dangerous. Sometimes it proves dangerous. So if you have this kind of a disease, ragaha, shokaha, mohaha, samsara roga, then better you should have some spiritual guide. How will know? Chapter 1. Chapter 1 indicates that the Shishya, Arjuna, has this roga, and definitely he goes to a teacher. Teacher is around, of course, but he has not looked up Krishna as a teacher, but just as he was like a friend. Hey Krishna, hey Yadava, hey Sakheti. In 11th chapter, he literally begs pardon for that. What Hey Krishna means, oh black one. It's actually that, not the name. Krishna word is used in a color also, and the particular color, and that color is black color. So because he was a black little bit, so hey Krishna. So in Gujarati we have called Kaliya or something. But it's just when the friends talk, they have some nicknames around. So that's how it is. Hey Yadava, like that. He is a Tribhuvanpati, and he just says, hey Yadava, hey Sakheti, hey Sakha, oh friend. Anyway, so he was around, but he did not take help because he has not found that he has a disease. Unless you find that you have a disease, why should you go to a doctor? There is no need. And even if you have a disease, there is a tendency for self-medication. Well, you should avoid it. And so to show that you should go to a spiritual guide for getting remedy, this is the second purpose has been shown here. So importance of Guru is highlighted, and the qualification of teacher and student also is prescribed. I will tell you that. So Guru is who? There's the Lord Krishna himself is a Guru, and the disciple is basically a Arjuna. And both are qualified. So, and the context is now presented here. Context, is a Mahabharata war. And in the chapter 1, it starts with Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Dhritarashtra said something. So this is how the Bhagavad Gita's, begins with this context. And that is, chapter 1 is basically opens with a question of a Dhritarashtra. And, his son was a Duryodhana. Duryodhana was already a king actually. But he was not, he sat on that throne actually. And the real rightful person for the throne he was a Dharmaputra. But they were, all this game has occurred and they were, put into exile for 13 years and all that. I think you know all this, so I'm not going much into detail. And so Dhritarashtra wants Duryodhana to be the king, ultimately. And he also had a hope that this Dharmaputra would definitely will not, support the war, in as much as when the war, Kshatriya's war means it's a killing, lots of killing. And being a Dharmaputra, and Ahimsa is a Parama Dharma, and therefore Dharmaputra wants to avoid that there should not be a war. And when the war would not be there, definitely Duryodhana will not have any kind of a problem. Because if war will happen, these Pandavas are going to kill my son. And therefore he was inside that hope. When he was asking question, he had a hope that perhaps Dharmaputra has declared that we don't want war. Like that. And that's how the question arises. But on the other side, he also had that little bit of solace. Now, this is how the conflict. That Bhishma and Drona are there on our side. And Bhishma was invincible. Arjuna had a no class. Bhima had a no class. They are just, like a no class. Against Bhishma, nobody could stand. Nobody. Not even Drona also. Such an invincible person. And other one is a Drona. Arjuna's, teacher. All missiles. He has all kinds of missiles. Full of missiles. Mantra missiles. And these two are on their side, so he had little solace. But anxiety was there. That at least Dharmaputra, even before the war begins, even the conches were blown, etc. Before that, Dharmaputra let it declare that no, we don't want this kind of war, because this army and all that, both the sides, all are going to kill in this war of Kshatriya, and therefore whether he has declared or not, such kind of anxiety was there in his mind. And then he asked the question to his minister, or you can say his personal secretary or personal advisor called Sanjaya. And Sanjaya had the audio-visual power, and therefore he could see from sitting in the palace itself in the Hastinapur, he could see the Kurukshetra and could report. So there is, and the power was given by Vyasacharya, That was a context. The Mahabharata war was a context. And so when both the armies like that, they joined together, and when they are about to fight, the Arjuna feels like, you see how the Daivam works. Arjuna feels like supervising the army on the opposite side. And he requests Bhagavan to, because he was a charioteer, so to bring the chariot in front of the opposite side. So basically, Bhagavan should bring it opposite to the Duryodhana, because that's ultimately a main person. But instead of that, he brought opposite to Bhishma and Drona. Well, and Arjuna's disease, the stage one, has arisen. And that is attachment from his. But how do you know, Swamiji, whether it is an attachment? It is a love. You don't know. He has played, in his lap, Bhishma's lap, Swamiji. Therefore, there is a love for Bhishma. And Drona was a teacher. He taught so much. Even at the cost of Karna also, he taught many things to Arjuna. And therefore, it is not an attachment. It's a love. That's how we have already seen before. So, no, it was an attachment. And because his thinking has been veiled, his intellect is covered. How do you say his intellect is covered? 13 years they have thought over. They have prepared themselves. And they were assured that this is a Dharma Yuddha. Because they have done injustice and they have closed all the doors. Kauravas have closed all the doors. These Pandavas have sent on a mission. They have sent a Bhagavan on a mission that you please explain them. At least they should give one house with 5 rooms and etc. We will be happy, but they declined. And Duryodhana was about to kill even Bhagavan also. Bhagavan has gone as a messenger, and in Dharma Shastra they say when the messenger who comes from the opposite side, you should not even arrest him. If at the best you should not agree to whatever the message will be there, but you should allow him to go to his own place. Instead, they were in a process of killing. And then there also Bhagavan showed the Vishwarupa, etc. Just by the way, he showed there also. And he told that this will not be in your benefit. He told, I am as a Lord, I am telling you this will not be in benefit. But Duryodhana did not agree. So all the doors have been closed. Arjuna was rest assured that this is Dharma Yuddha. And therefore he should fight. Where is the question of, he is a Kshatriya, and being a Dharma Yuddha, after fight, Dharma is going to win. Well, Kshatriya has to give up his life also for Dharma, sake of Dharma, for protection of Dharma. That is their duty. And this, what happens just by seeing these two people, he decided not to fight, as though, in his mind. So definitely his intellect is veiled now. So protection of Dharma also is veiled. I told you in the last point that when your intellect is veiled, even you will not be in a position to follow Dharma. That has arisen. And therefore this is not this is not an love. It was pure case of an attachment. This is in the stage 1 has appeared, looking at these two people. And not only that, he thought, the way he argued with the Bhagavan is, this is not Dharma Yuddha. He says this is Adharma Yuddha. By killing them, we are going to incur Adharma. That's what he very clearly says. So, entirely opposite view. That shows moha has also arisen. Very fast spreading disease. So, from attachment, emotional dependence to these two people, from there the sorrow also has born, and from there moha also is born. Dharma Yuddha is looked upon as Adharma Yuddha. Understand this. And he has given a big lecture to Bhagavan. If it is independent of the Mahabharata context, it's a beautiful lecture. We should listen it again and again. Absolutely, it was just fantastic. But in this context, it was just a blabbering of kind of a thing, because it was a Dharma Yuddha and they should fight it, and instead he is seeing as a Adharma. Not only that, the second thing also has arisen, that having decided to take a war, Kshatriya should never withdraw. That's Dharma. Kshatriya should never withdraw from the war. And where Kshatriya is responsible for his family, etc., he should not run away from family life also and taking to sannyasa also. And he talks about sannyasa. Right in the middle of the battle, he talks of sannyasa also. I mean, that shows. And where he has to fight, instead he wants to run away. So actually, he is taking a part of a adharma. The Kshatriya dharma is when he is in the middle of the war and he has to fight for the protection of dharma, he has to fight, instead he wants to run away. And he has a certain responsibilities of a family, etc. At that time he wants to run away, and taking as a sannyasa is adharma. And definitely this is how, if we could see, and he could also see. But Swamiji, how can we know that he could see this problem? He has told in the second chapter. Karpanya dosho pahatas svabhaha pruchhami tvam dharma sammuda chetaha. With respect to this dharma, my mind, chetaha, my mind is sammudaha. It's already deluded. Moha has arisen. Stage 3 of this disease has already crossed. So Krishna, hey Krishna, I am confused with respect to this. He says that way. Anyway, so definitely if moha has arisen in him, definitely attachment is there, and we know attachment is towards these two people, and from there sorrow, from there moha, everything. So what this is we have described, that this is we have found at least in one case, and that is this person. Rare, he's a rare person to get this disease. No, it's widespread disease. Anyway, and this kind of a thing we also come across, like suppose if I'm working in a particular organization and there are all the cameras, etc. They put all the cameras in a manufacturing section, and they always see a particular, especially food items when they are manufactured, you will find them that person has a habit of just stealing one packet and keeping inside and all that. And suppose a person does, and it was caught on the camera, and it was brought to the notice of the head. And then the head says, okay, we have only one law. If person is caught stealing, we should give him a pink slip. That's all. There is nothing else. And therefore, so they have decided. That person, the head was about to sign to relieve him from the job. And at that time, if one person comes and tells, sir, wait a minute. You know who is that person? I don't want to know. Whoever he may be. He has to go. He should be, right now he should be relieved from the job. But listen, what happens? This is your brother-in-law. Ayyo. That's all. So all the talks of dharmas and laws and everything just remain there. He could not do anything, as if his intellect is now come to, he got a very delusion with respect to this. So everyone is a dharmika you can see that when they have to take a decision with respect to somebody else. When there is attachment with respect to our own people, this dharma, etc., remains away. That's how I said, where there is attachment, there is more likely a tendency to violate dharma. That will be there. And we have also seen the other case when the base doctor will find it very difficult to do a difficult surgery if the patient happens to be his own child. Because he could not do a surgery as a doctor. He has to do a surgery as a father. I mean, he has not to do a surgery, but he could not just keep the fatherhood away. He cannot. And therefore, such situations arise for the person. This all, Arjuna also goes through this problem of viraga, and towards this Bhishma and Drona, that leads to shokaha, and that leads to moha. Arjuna finds himself helpless. And the moment he discovers this helplessness, he surrenders to Lord Krishna. And who knows this medicine? Vaidyo Narayano Harihi. That's how they say. So, what is the qualification of the student? We can learn from this is discovery of this problem, discovery of the disease, human problem. That's the basic qualification of the student. And because without discovering the problem, he will never go to a doctor. And therefore, for the remedy, and therefore this is the qualification of the student. What's the qualification of the teacher who gives a doctor, who gives the remedy? First, he should be free from the disease. unlike in the world never find. The person who is treating diabetes, he himself has a random sugar 175, 200 all the time. The person who is a heart surgeon, he himself has undergone heart surgery thrice. So, but that should not be the case here. I mean, so the person who is treating this, a teacher, should be free from the disease. And he should know the remedy also. That person becomes a guru. And so both are qualified. When both are qualified, when they come together, the conditions are ideal for a spiritual dialogue or the remedy to take place. And so teaching starts from 11th verse of chapter 2. I will have to tell you about what are the 10 verses of the chapter 2. I will tell in brief. We need not go each one in detail because from 11th verse onwards, whatever is there is very, very important. And you have got an idea also. So now 10 verses I will tell you in brief tomorrow. This is the introduction of the chapter 1. And 10 verses of chapter 2, that introduction also I will give you. And then we will start 11th verse also. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om.